As we keep on rolling through these revamped archetypes that the Prop 15 format brought about, here's one that actually leans more on the side of a full gym leader deck, which is what the Gym Hero and Gym Challenge sets really wanted players to do. The classic Venucenter build basically used base set Venusaur to move energy off of a Pokemon so that you could safely use Pokemon Center to heal all damage from it, move those energy back, and keep attacking, rinse and repeat. But it didn't really have very many good grass type pairings to go with it. However, the gym sets brought about a perfect partner for Venusaur, which was another Venusaur. It had a pretty great spread attack where it could deal small chunks of damage all over the place, which let you pick up 2 or 3 kills at the same time late in the game. Paired with that is another Erika card, which is Erika's Dratini. It had one of the greatest abilities for a basic at the time where you could only deal damage to it in increments of 10 at a time. So anything that was greater than 10 was reduced to 10. And this helped out a lot of decks that needed a little bit of setup. You could throw this Dratini out here and not really have to worry about a Rocket Zapdos or a Rocket Scyther or Hitmonchan knocking it out in one hit because they can only deal 10 damage to it. Meanwhile, you can set up your bench as much as you want. This deck takes a minimum of 3 turns to set up. 4 if you're wanting to attack that turn, since both of these Venusaur cards have an attack for 4 energy. So let's get into this thing and start throwing around some grass energy. So we will have a Prop 15 playset of Bulbasaur, 3 copies of it. It has been really hard to run this prior to this format because it only has 40 HP. It was just wide open to get gusted off of the bench and an easy knockout for your opponent. And instead of using Pokemon Breeder too extensively in this deck, I do run copies of Ivysaur and Venusaur. That's because you do have time to evolve up. Plus, Ivysaur can have some benefits in case the off chance your opponent actually does have Gust, which was really rare in Prop 15. But you get that added HP, which can help it survive at least a little chunk of damage before evolving into Venusaur. And Venusaur, of course, has that ability that lets you transfer as many grass energy back and forth during your turn as you want. Erika's Bulbasaur, on the other hand, it has 50 HP and 2 great attacks, especially that Sleep Seed. 10 damage and it automatically puts your opponent to sleep. Makes for a stall great card, or makes for a great stall card rather. And Erika's Venusaur takes it a step further. It has an ability where anytime someone attacks, there's a 50% chance it's not even going to happen. You have to flip a coin to see if it goes through. And Erika's Venusaur, of course, its first attack growth can actually add grass energy to the playing field, which gives it some synergy with the base set Venusaur. The more energy you have to move around, the better off you're going to be. And then, of course, that wide solar beam. So you can deal 20 to your opponent's active, and then also pick 2 on their bench and deal 20 to those as well. So you're spreading around this damage, you're letting it build up slowly over time. And in Prop 15, people didn't really run Potion or Pokemon Center aside from a deck like this. Kangaskhan is in this deck as a replacement for Chansey. I like it better because of its utility with Fetch. If you start the game with it, you can just put it as your active, throw 1 energy on it, and forget about it. These are where a lot of your scoop ups are going to be occurring, is on Kangaskhan. You'll want to save the Pokemon Centers for your actual Venusaur, since those are the big bulk of this deck and those are your game winners. So if Kangaskhan racks up a lot of damage on it, you'll just use Scoop Up, discard that energy. It's not going to cost you all that much since there's a ton of energy in this deck, and it keeps you from, or keeps your opponent from taking a prize card off of a Kangaskhan. Erika's Dratini, of course, has that great attack that's all stall all the way. Your opponent can only deal 10 damage to it at a time with that Strange Barrier ability. 3 copies of Breeder just to get into those base set Venusaurs a little bit faster. Computer Search helps you search out those Pokemon Centers and scoop ups in the time that you need them. Professor Oak's mainly to just get a handful of energy, as well as some of those Stage 1 and Stage 2 evolutions pretty early in the game, and lets you set up easier that way. And that way you won't have to computer search as much. and the rest of the deck is going to be filled out with grass energy. Now, your ideal start for this is going to be with a Kangaskhan. Um, you're not always going to get it. Dratini is also a great start too, but that Kangaskhan is going to let you fetch over and over again. Your opponent isn't going to really be able to knock out a 90 HP Mon that early on, even with something really aggressive like Haymaker. So you'll get a few of those off, and by the time it's got 70 damage or so on it, you're going to have a scoop up in your hand, so you can scoop it up, play it back to your bench if you want to. By this point, you should have a couple of Venusaur set up, so it's not really going to be that helpful late game, which is where the Venusaurs really come in. You get this synergy going of laying down a lot of grass energy across your bench, using Venusaur's ability to move it onto Erika's Venusaur with that great wide Solar Beam attack, and just start firing those off one after another. Now, Erika's Venusaur has 90 HP, so again, it's not going to get OHKO'd by anything. It can take a couple of turns to knock it out, unless some really crazy things are happening, like if someone plays Rocket Zapdos and has 4 energy on it, and they can lay down 2+ power, which is pretty crazy. But anyway, if it gets a lot of damage on it, you'll just move those off with a Venusaur's power, use Pokemon Center on Erika's Venusaur, and then move them right back, and continue to spam wide Solar Beam until you're going to get to a point where a lot of your opponent's Pokemon are going to have tons of damage counters on them. You'll be able to knock out 2, 3, 4 different Pokemon all in the same turn. The main thing that kept this deck from being a really good rogue deck and seeing a lot of play at tournaments is that there was another rogue deck that was taking it over, and that is Blaine. Blaine completely destroys this deck. It has cards in it like Blaine's Arcanine, which can hit incredibly hard, and then you also had things like Blaine's Ninetales, which could hit really hard really fast, especially when paired with a Blaine trainer card. In a format where Rocket Zapdos was king, Rain Dance stayed out of the way, which made more room for fire decks to come in. And those were not good for Venusaur. They're one of the few cards that could actually OHKO it and keep you from spreading damage at all. The other main problem with this deck is that you're limited to using Pokemon Center only 3 times, so there's no item finder in this build. It could be added in if that's a problem you're super worried about. You could just completely take out Breeder and replace it with item finder. However, I found that it made the deck almost too slow, so I ended up having to send out a lot of Bulbasaurs and Venusaurs and let them get knocked out just to stall while I set up another one on the bench. I'm also not running Nightly Garbage Run in this deck, which at the time most decks ran at least one just to keep them from decking out and just in case they really needed energy back in their deck. So sometimes you can run the risk of actually stalling for too long getting that set up. You stall so long that you deck out while your opponent has been able to use a couple of Nightly Garbage Runs and sustain their deck numbers while you kind of peter out. Keeping with the Erika theme, you could run Erika's Perfume, which would make sure that your opponent has Pokemon on the bench. Once they see Erika's Venusaur, they might be a little scared to put things down, just because they know they're going to rack up 20 damage on them every turn. But if you play Erika's Perfume, you can make sure that they get on the bench, and at that point there's no taking them back. This works really well with Erika's Victory Bell too. If you wanted to use that in the deck and completely take out that Kangaskhan line maybe, or at least replace 1 or 2 of the base set Venusaurs with the Bellsprout to Victory Bell line. It does have a little bit of synergy there, and it can catch your opponent off guard and be a little fun to use. Or if you just want to go for a straight Erika deck and not have the Venusaur in there at all, Erika's Victory Bell is a really good option to replace it with. As always, let me know what you think about the deck, and let me know what decks you would like to see me do in the future. So until next time, guys, bye!